Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley. He's on the House Intelligence Committee. He's also the co-chair of the Congressional Ukraine Caucus. Congressman, it doesn't appear Russia is heeding any of the Western kind of universe's warnings at this point in time. Are there enough threats, the sanctions being the primary one, at this point in time to actually make a difference?
A couple things. I respect President Zelensky, but the last thing I want to do is let President Putin know what those threats are, what those exact sanctions are. Do we want to give him forewarning so he can put that in his calculus to decide whether or not this is worth it? And do we really want to tie our hands and let others, perhaps like China, who would help them circumvent this, know exactly what they're going to deal with? No, I'd rather President Putin be a little unsettled about unprecedented sanctions on every aspect of their economy, and not just the oligarchs, but he himself. As to whether I think the sanctions will be enough, watching this on the Intel Committee for 7 years and President Putin pretty directly, my own assessment is he probably values Ukraine being back under the Soviet sphere of influence, if not direct control, more than he does a pipeline. So I think what you really threaten is some of the things that we've started to do, troop posturing in Eastern Europe, the tank sale to Poland. He wants the U.S. out of Europe. He wants NATO to dissolve and certainly stay out of Eastern Europe. I think what you threaten with him is the opposite, that he would have an extraordinary NATO presence at his doorstep if he continues to act this way.
Now, President Biden said yesterday that almost definitely Russia has decided to invade. The Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, echoed that today. I guess, and we've heard this from Republicans, the Congress is united, particularly in the leadership level, in terms of this moment in time. But one thing they differ on is application of sanctions and when. If the invasion is inevitable or is viewed as inevitable, why not pull the trigger on sanctions now?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit of, are you provoking or are you appeasing? And I think you try to strike that balance, recognizing that we're not acting alone. We have to act with our NATO allies. So it's a balancing act. I think you certainly prepare them. Frankly, I thought it was bad timing for the Senate not to come to an accord when I believe that they could and they should. So I think we're going to get there. I'm feeling better about how our NATO allies feel about this. And if an invasion takes place, I don't think there's any doubt that they'll act appropriately and with due haste.
One of the questions I've had, President Biden has made clear there will be no U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. It is not a NATO ally. It is not, Article 5 is not applicable here. But what does the day after look like from the congressional perspective if Russia invades? Obviously, the sanctions package will be triggered. But what do lawmakers do in this moment in time? What's your role here?
Sure. I mean, I think part of this is communicating to the American people just what this means and why it matters. Besides the being the right thing to do to defend Ukraine, a sovereign democracy at Putin's doorstep, who have been fighting the Russians for 7 years. They signed the Budapest Memorandum. So it's the right thing to do. It's also the smart thing to do. And an invasion impacts everyone in the United States. Aside from a refugee crisis, a humanitarian crisis that would come with it, either the response to the sanctions we give or the invasion and the war that would take place would dramatically impact the United States. Cut off of energy to Western Europe would mean worldwide markets and a reduction there, an increase in prices and shortages. The scarce resources that come out of both countries would have further complicate already difficult supply chain issues. So we are going to have skin in the game. It affects us. It's the right thing to do. And they need to be unified with how we go forward with sanctions, recognizing, as I believe the president alluded to, helping other democracies does not come without a cost. There will be a cost, but it's important.
Yeah, it's a critical message. One thing I really wanted to ask you, you're a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. When I was a Capitol Hill reporter, I would ask you about things that the Intel Committee had seen, and you would say you couldn't talk about it, which is very true. But the White House has been so willing to almost in real time release intelligence, make very clear what they're seeing, or at least a chunk of what they're seeing, to a degree we've never seen before. It's clearly strategic. It's clearly calibrated. What do you make of the decision to take that posture over the course of the last couple of weeks?
You're right. It is unprecedented. It's a game changer for us on the committee. First of all, the president is right, and the intel has been outstanding since we started learning about this several months ago. And I think warning the world about things like a false flag has real value. It makes it much more difficult for Putin to act in the manner in which we are pretty sure he'd like to do. The issues of provocation as well. So I think it helps educate the American people and our NATO allies about how this would go forward. It also sets the stage in a very real sense. The president is right. He doesn't allude to specific intel, but he references it in saying that the threat is there and that an invasion is imminent. And I assume, most of what he has, and he is absolutely right. But I guess I would remind people, even if the intel wasn't there, and I understand and prelude to previous conflicts that has been conflicted, we can't check our common sense at the door. The fact of the matter is, Putin has invaded Ukraine twice before, Moldova, Georgia. He has 190,000 troops flanking. He has military exercises taking place to the north and to the south. You're seeing missile exercises now, the evacuation of civilians in the east, the full Kremlin playbook in full operation from propaganda to provocation. So this is dangerous. This is imminent. It matters to all of us, and we need to be ready.
Yeah, it doesn't take great intelligence to see 190,000 personnel built up at the border. Congressman Mike Quigley, thanks so much as always, sir. Appreciate it.